Good morning. My name is Lindsay Benstead. I am the director of the Middle East Studies Center and chair of Politics and Global Affairs at Portland State University. It's my pleasure to welcome you here today for this special event, which is co-presented by MESC and Politics and Global Affairs. This is a special event which is part of Nidal Bitar's class on social inequalities. It's my great pleasure to welcome our guest today, Julia Bou Karoum, who's joining us from Beirut to speak to us about her area of expertise on war, crisis, and survival, a feminist perspective from Lebanon. So thank you, Julia, for being here. We're very much looking forward to what you'll have to share with us today. By way of introduction, Julia Bou Karoum is a gender equality, safeguarding, and social inclusion expert with over 18 years of experience in the MENA region, specializing in gender equality, human rights, and inclusive development. She currently serves as components coordinator for the Women Empowerment Hub in Lebanon, implemented by Expertise France, overseeing women's political participation, economic inclusion, and gender-based violence, access to justice. Her expertise spans gender analysis, political development, training, and civil society capacity. I would ask that you would, while you're not speaking, if you're in the online audience today, if you would just turn your camera off. This may help us with the bandwidth. You can ask questions in the Q&A. So what we'll do after we hear from Julia today, I'll turn the floor over to Nidal Bitar, who will take questions from his students in his classroom, and then following that I'll moderate the online Q&A. So once again, Julia, thank you so much for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Lindsay. Thank you, everyone. And first of all, good evening from Beirut. Good morning from your end. Thank you first of all for the host and for the session. I'm very looking forward. I'm not gonna take a lot of your time. So as Dr. Lindsay was introducing, I will try my best to give you more insights about and more information about our reality nowadays in Lebanon. From my own experience, driven from my own experience, and trying to cover as much as I can the situation from a different lens that might be an interest for you. So I'm so happy to be here and looking forward for your questions at the end of the session. So just let me introduce myself quickly because this has much relation with what I'm gonna cover in the whole presentation. So as you can see, or as has been introduced, I'm a gender expert and I'm currently working in the field. But as well, at the end of the day, I'm an individual, I'm a Lebanese citizen, I'm a woman living in Lebanon. Amid the crisis now taking place. It's not a new crisis. It has been accumulated since ever. I belong to a generation that has been born in Lebanon during the war, and I've been living in the country during the war, and I witnessed a lot of crisis, a lot of war, a lot of clashes. So I can say about myself that I'm a resilient woman. Right now, I'm a mother. I have a daughter. She's 10 years old. In my turn, I'm a daughter of my mother, who as well lived all these crises and witnessed much more than I witnessed during this accumulated situation in the region and in our country in specific. I'm a sister, I'm a wife, I'm an employee, and nowadays, to add on the top of these, I'm a breadwinner for my family because of the crisis and the accumulated crisis in Lebanon. My partner had to, his work was stopped for many reasons due to the economic crisis. So we alternate, if you wish, between us. So now I'm the sole breadwinner in the family. I'm a feminist practitioner, and when I say feminist practitioners, I'm not only saying it's about women or about specific gender. For me, being feminist, that means I hold a political agenda toward equalities. This is how I see it. This is how I believe in it. And ipso facto, like we say, I'm a human rights activist. So what I'm gonna share today with you, it's not only about the situation and analysis, it's more about the realities we are living and what are the challenges that we face and how the situation is in real in Lebanon. Quickly, I have a motto that I keep remind myself about, and I know you might know about it. I'm gonna ask if you know who said it, but for me, it's a quote that I always use and I always remind myself about is that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a simple garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly, it will affect all indirectly. So I think you might know who said this. Anyone would like to reflect?
Who?
Okay. No? Okay, it's a Martin Luther King. So it is something that it's tied to my early introduction to human rights. And back then, during a training I was attending, the trainer used this, talked or told us about the story and the history about Martin Luther King. And this quote caught my eyes in somewhere because I feel, yes, this is the reality. That's why we are human rights defenders. That's why we are human rights activists. It's not because we want to serve our rights only as a population or as a group in a certain country, because we believe what we fight for in our own situation or in our own context, it has an impact to everyone else, everyone in the world. And yes, we are interlinked. We are in one garment. We are here to serve humanity at the end of the day. So I'm gonna as well add on top of this introduction something that will be very from one side, it makes me laugh sometimes when I look into this result, the number you see on the screen, but at the same time, it's the reality that we live. So recently, there's a group of young people who initiated or who established this website you see on the screen here. It's Wars in Lebanon. So it's a simple website or simple app. You go into the website, you enter your date of birth and the year of birth, and it will automatically calculate for you how much of your own time, of your own life you spent in Lebanon in war. And it will show you a timeline of all the crises that we went through. It's a very important initiative in my own point of view because it helps us to not lose the memory of how many crises we went through. Because we have the tendency here to always, because we are jumping from one crisis to another, from one war to another, there's always a space to forget what we went through. And this is the history that Lebanon hold on. We forget that we went through a lot of war. We forgot that we went through a civil war previously. So keeping this track of the memory is very important to remind us that we don't want to be there anymore. We don't want to be in such situation anymore. So when I had this calculation, I ended up by discovering that I spent 30 years and 2 months of my life actually in war context or in a crisis context. And it's equal to 65% of my whole life spent in this context. This is something very significant from one side, and it brought to our eyes or it brought to our reality that this is not okay. Why we should be always having these kind of results. And the youngest generation, if I take for example this calculation for my kid, she's now 10 years, she will have 80 or 90% of her total life that she lived until now in war and in crisis. So this is something that we don't want to see anymore. And that's why I'm a practitioner, feminist practitioner. That's why I'm a human rights defender, because I want to end up one day, a young woman, a young man would take this calculation and they will not receive the same results at least. So this is a quick brief to take you into why I'm gonna talk about all of this and why this means a lot to me, to share with everyone what is the reality. In this world full of information, of sources, we have easy access to everything. So we can access any information we want, any time in a day, at any moment. But with this information really reflect the reality in this age of multiple sources of information, for me, it doesn't make any sense, because the person who really reflects the reality are those who lived the experience. And I'm gonna take you on a journey of this lived experience. So let me take a quick back to Lebanon in its crisis context. To start with, I've mentioned before that Lebanon went into multiple crises, but the major turning point started in 1975, when the Lebanese civil war broke, and we had a lot of parties and militias taking the street, taking the whole battle and leading all this war. And it lasted for 15 years. For a small country like Lebanon with 18 sects within its society, it's a very diverse society when we talk about sects. So 18 sects, it means we have 18 religious, 18 reference in religious. And these 15 years made Lebanon pay a big price, and we are still paying this price until today. And I will show you how things went through during the whole crisis journey. So 15 years of civil war left a country in a fragmentation status on many levels. After these 15 years, the conflicted parties came together for an agreement that is well known of the Ta'if Agreement, because it took place, the conflicted parties sat together in the city of Ta'if in Saudi Arabia to agree to end the war and to agree on how to build the country after the war. So there comes the post-war reconstruction phase. And this phase, because it came after a fragmentation and after a big war, it didn't come based on accountability or put those people who were on the front lines into accountability and fighting the reason behind the war. It came built up on the results of the war. So those who were fighting actually took the leading on the country. And this, I think, for me, this is the big problematic start of building a country or building a state. Nevertheless, when the post-war reconstruction started, it was really characterized about it being uneven and unequal. And when I say this, because when they start to rebuild the state or to make the state functional, they distributed the power of the states and the positions of the state among all these 18 sects. So each one had to preserve their own seats and power, etc., etc. So this made things not working well and complicated more and more, and adding layers on the functionality of the state that made it a slow growing up state in that sense. Fast forward, in order not to go into the small details that has been taking place between the post-war and the 2006 war. The 2006 war broke is when Israel invaded Lebanon, and we had big clashes and we had a big war, left the country with a lot of destruction and a huge number of displacement, mainly from south of Lebanon. So this took a major time of years to have the IDPs going back to their home and rebuilding their own villages. Fast forward to 2011, when the revolution in Syria started and the war broke in Syria, and we received a spillover in the refugees influx. in 2011. This added on a weak state, on a fragile state, on a fragmented state with very weak infrastructure, additional responsibility to respond to this situation and to respond to the needs of the refugees. This is added more from our end. So definitely the state wasn't ready to respond in a very constructive manner, in a very humanitarian manner. Those who took the lead on this are mainly the international organizations, the local organizations who were supporting this spillover. Moving forward until 2019, when the economic collapses start. And in 2019, two major things happened: the economic collapse and as well the response that came from the citizens in the street, who took the street and started what they called back then the revolution, although it doesn't have a full revolution elements, but it still was a street movement where people took the street and revolted, quote unquote, against the let's say economic decisions and decrees that back then the cabinet of ministers took by raising the prices of the main basics, infrastructure, electricity, etc., with an economic collapse. So the people were really in anger and they took the streets. So back then, in 2019, the same year, started the global COVID-19. And people had to go and stay at home at back then. So it stopped, the movement stopped by then because of the COVID-19 and the global pandemic. By 2020, Beirut faced the Beirut port explosion that has been ranked the third biggest explosion in the world, where I'm not sure if everyone knows about it, but it was caused because in the port of Beirut there was a big bunch of nitrate uranium that has been stocked in the Beirut port, and apparently back then these were made through a corrupted government who made or passed the decrees to have these materials being stocked in the airport, in the port, and it caused a big explosion back then, and we had half of Beirut that has been partially destroyed. We had a lot of death, we had a lot of injuries, and people and families are still until now seeking the justice. Since then, until now, we didn't have any closure or any clear, let's say, judgment or sentences who were responsible of this. Although we all know, we don't need any affirmation, but the system should work at this stage as a proper, but still the law enforcement wasn't attained as we expected. Moving forward, by then we had the currency, because of the economic collapse, COVID-19, and the explosion of Beirut, everything was totally uneven and unequal, and then where our currency was devaluated. So our currency lost approximately 90% of its value, and by that the poverty started to increase among people. People lost their income, the value of their income. They lost as well their savings at the bank because of the economic collapse. People were left after being working for years and years, saving for either for their elderly or their pension or for their kids to be seeking education. They lost everything. So the poverty was increased, and later on we witnessed a phase of political paralysis and even more fragmentation on the political scene. The country was out of any president or cabinet, ministry of cabinets, or even parliament, newly elected parliament for 2 years. And this has pushed the economic even worse, the political situation even worse, until they all came together again. They elected the president assigned the prime minister, we had a government back then, and then they launched the elections, we had new elections and new parliament. But meanwhile, within all this process, the ongoing tensions within the society on the political level was ongoing. It never stopped until 2023, which is the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. We all know the war broke again after Hezbollah decided to support the war taking place in Gaza. We have been under the spot. We have been targeted as well by Israeli, and the war broke officially between Israel and Lebanon. And again, the south of Lebanon was hit and was under the fire once again. And we repeated the same 2006 war and its consequences of destructions and displacement again and again. Among all these crises, you have to bear in mind that the infrastructure was breaking down day after day. And when I say infrastructure, I say the infrastructure of the basic needs, starting from the electricity, that it's a major for everything, for economy, for education, for work, for everything. So we have big problem on this sector. The health sector has been declining big time. The education sector, and when I talk about the education, I'm talking about the public education as well, because the private education in Lebanon is being supported through the fund, either from international or from alumni who were able to support and keep on boosting the system as it is. But the private education in Lebanon is very expensive as well, while the public education was declining day after day. So within all these crises, you name whatever you want, you would have in mind that might be affected, and definitely it is affected in Lebanon. This is to give a quick snapshot, if you wish, about the situation. So why we're talking about why I need to focus from a feminist lens on the crisis, because the most affected population within all these crises are the vulnerable population. And when we talk about the vulnerable population, women and other vulnerable groups are among the main population who always pay the price, or who are the first to pay the price. So poverty, when the poverty rise, it rise first or it will be first affecting those vulnerable populations. So we can see more women who are either out of work, out of economic support, holding more burden, especially when it comes to the care work. And when we talk about the care work, it's not only taking care of the children, it's the whole care work that might be in need for taking care of elderly, taking care of the family, taking care of other people, especially the displaced women, and we will have some talk about it later on. Within all these crises, taking into consideration that the government and the infrastructure is broke, so we don't have enough support coming from the government because of the weak infrastructure and the weak and the fragile state. So automatically, those who are going to support or to replace these kind of services are the civil society. Namely, I'm going to focus on women-led organizations and women rights organizations, because they were the first to respond to the needs of women and children in this situation. Within a recent report launched by UN Women, it was launched in March 2025, especially after the international and the foreign fund or assistance had been cut down. They were the first to be affected by this cut. They made a survey with 400 organizations to check on their situation. The number that came under these surveys are really shocking, because 90% of these organizations reported that they had faced financial crisis because of this cut, which means facing financial crisis, it means that programs that support women or provide services, specific services that is not provided by the government, had been under a threat or a risk to be ended. 51% of these organizations had already cutted their program, especially the services program. And when we say services program, we're talking about psychological support, psychosocial support, economic support, sheltering, sexual reproductive health. All these kind of services had been cut to half. And 47% are expecting, from these organizations, are expecting to close down their services. Nevertheless, during this crisis, a lot of local organizations, specifically women-led organizations who are providing such support in south of Lebanon, they closed for good now because their shelters, their service premises had been totally destroyed, and they were not able to continue their support as it was in usual days. Now, if I'm gonna wrap up, if you wish, how this crisis has been affecting or being really impacting the daily lives of women in specific and other vulnerable group from different, let's say, different sector or different categories. So just to give, or I think it is something that, which I think I'm really sure it's something common everywhere and globally. The first people who would be responding to any crisis or receive the shock of any crisis or observe the shock of any crisis are women in general. This is the most common in any conflict or any disaster context. So when it comes to them, their situation or their autonomy will be fragile, and they will lose all the privilege, if we want to say it, if we want to call it privilege, that they used to have in a normal time or in a peacetime. They will lose it with time, specifically in a crisis, be it economic, be it disaster, natural disaster, or being a conflict context. So on the economic level, there's a lot of inequalities that has been that rose recently in Lebanon. One of them is that women, because of the crisis, they went out of the economic cycle or they left their jobs because, companies, private sector either left the countries or closed because of the crisis. So all the employees were left out. Most of these were women, and they were pushed to go into informal economy or informal sector. And when we say informal sector, that means there is no protection, no legal framework that would be protecting their lives, no social security will be provided, no health insurance will be provided. So they have been pushed to the informal work. They have been, and the wage gaps have been rising or widening between women and men as well. When it comes to the care economy, by providing, at the end of the day, we all know that in a normal situation, women still provide an unpaid care or unpaid labor through their care provision. And during the crisis, this unpaid care had been rising again and again because they are the first frontliners or responders to the protection of their families and to the provision of their families. So, talking about this as well, additional let's say, factors that played around is the rise of the violence against women, and it comes in different shapes. From gender-based violence that is being interlinked to the norms, to the how we perceive women, to the misogyny, to the sometimes beliefs in a different different communities, different religious belief that foreseen women that they are undermined, they are less important, let's say, category among the population, and thus will give them the right to be acting in a violent way against women. So we can see the gender-based violence is rising. Additionally, the gender-based violence might be rising because it's always interlinked. When we have a crisis, what kind of crisis, it's always there's a rise of the GBV. And add on top of this that while they are facing this, they have limited access to services because of the weak infrastructure, because we don't have these services provided by the government, and we have the cut of the funds, so they have less access to services. In some places, it's almost absent, so they rely on other services coming from different areas in Lebanon. So it's all a chaotic. On the legal side, already in our situation, in our context, our legal framework is already categorized by a discriminatory approach toward women. Also, there's a lot of work that has been done for ages by women-led organizations and by women rights organizations. We made a lot of, let's say, gains in that sense when it comes to legislation, but still it's very limited. Still, it's very slow because yet sometimes we have the law that has been, let's say, legalized or approved, but it ends up by being a law on a paper without any practical policies or practical or functioning mechanisms. So we end up not benefiting from any law that would take place, although we celebrate and we push forward and we move for a more advocacy to have these policies and these framework of protections in place. So until now, we still have a weak protection frameworks because of this situation, because of how the government in general and the legislative bodies foresee the implementation of the legal decisions. And adding on top of this, the restrictions or the reservation that the Lebanese state has on CEDAW main two articles when it comes to the nationality law and the personal status law. And here I want to highlight two things. Women in Lebanon don't have the right to pass their nationality to their kids. This is first. This is the first discriminatory element, and Lebanon has made a reservation on CEDAW to adapt this reform, and it was related or based on political matters because they don't want to have raise in a number of a certain religious sect more than the other sects, so it's totally political. Also, it's not the case because the number of women who had been married from foreigners are really very low number, but the situation of their kids or their children is really harmful because they have to renew their residency in Lebanon each year. Otherwise, they will be expelled from the country. Another reservation that has been made by the state is on the personal status law. Like I mentioned previously, because we have 18 sects in Lebanon, so the personal status law refers to the religious courts. So me as a woman, when it comes to my personal status law, I can't not refer to a civil law that would be providing me with the protection that I need or giving me my rights as it should be as a citizen in Lebanon, although I should be referring to the religions that I belong to the religious court that I belong to. This leaves women within Lebanon, Lebanese women within Lebanon, different from each other because they belong to different religions. So on this level, additional layer of the discrimination. Nevertheless, the women rights organizations are working, and we had, since 10 years, there were many draft laws that has been made their ways to the parliament, but still not discussed seriously by the parliamentarians and still under discussion and push. Let's hope that we can reach one day to have this law in place. On the political representation level, we are, I think, we were ranked among the lowest countries in the world when it comes to the representation. Although Lebanese women gained the right to vote since 1946, and they were the first country among the Arab countries to win this right. But now they are the less to be represented in the politics. The recent elections, we had 6.3% of women in the parliament, which is a very, very low number comparing to where women really are or positioned in the country in general, either in the private sector or the public sector. You can see women in many decision-making places within the private sector. You can see them active. You can see them in the field. They are the first respondent in any humanitarian or disaster crisis, yet they are not represented or they are not taking the lead in any decision-making mechanism. On the poverty and survival, in Lebanon, over 55, we are now having like 55% poverty among the Lebanese population. We have 89% of Syrian refugees who are in an extreme poverty. The rising of food insecurity has been up to 30% because of the crisis and the economic collapse. And within a period of 10 years, we shifted from 12% of increase of the poverty to 44%, which is a very dangerous number, not to say the more. Like I mentioned previously, the care burden is one of the elements that has been affecting women, especially in times of crisis, because it adds on the care that we normally take on as caregivers. It adds more unpaid labor or unpaid care, and it adds more emotional and economic burden because we have to be taking care of our children in a time of crisis and a time of war on the emotional level. Make sure that we can provide more economic support because most of the, for example, the IDPs lost their jobs, lost their income. So it's always coming back over the shoulder of the woman. So if I want to say as well, if I look into the system of the inequalities in Lebanon, it's overlapping. It's multiple layers overlapping from an intersectional lens. There is no one line or one way of discrimination. It's very complicated because it plays around the multiple identities based on gender, based on the class, based on nationalities, based on legal status, based on the sect, based on the location, the geographic location, if you're coming from south, north, Mount Lebanon, etc. And of course, we have women with disabilities as well who didn't reach their rights as well in this in the legal framework. When we talk about the class, I want to focus as well about Lebanese women because here as well, you have those who are on a wealthy position might be able to access services because they pay for it. Those who are not wealthy enough or on the poverty side, they have no access to any kind of services. This as well leaves another layer of discrimination among the Lebanese women. I'm going to just give an example from a recent situation now we are living in Lebanon. As you know, since the war broke, we had kind of what is called, it's not kind of, it is an ecocide that is taking place in south of Lebanon. And when I talk about the south of Lebanon or the Bekaa area, these are the two places that have a big agriculture lands that provide almost half of the agri-food for Lebanon. So Lebanon relies on these two places to provide the agri-food necessity and basics. So within the current invasion in south of Lebanon, we lost a big amount of secured food agriculture. Within this situation or within these realities, like before the war, the agriculture field used to be run by women because the farmers in Lebanon, 94% of the farmers in south of Lebanon only are women. And you have a highest number as well in Bekaa area. Now both locations are being attacked, and both these locations are being under fire, and both these locations are being subject of ecocide. Nevertheless, while these women are making the highest number among the farmers in Lebanon, they were still paid less by 43% than men. And they own almost 5% of the land. They are the owners who can really take the decision. Now, since 2019 until now, starting with the economic collapse, which has made all the supplies or the necessity supplies for an agriculture field, whatever, like seeds, like fertilizers, etc., we had a rise in the price. So these farmers or these owners of farms, they were not even able to sustain their production. This is first. Then came the war, and we had faced the ecocide, like I was mentioning. Lebanon lost almost $704 million by these results. Who are the first to be affected? They are the women, because they make the highest number of those who are benefiting from the agriculture and the agri-food system, or the agri-food production. The type of production or the type of agri-food that we rely on are ranging between the olive and all what comes, or kind of agri-food that is related to the olive, from the olive itself to the oil to the soap that we make over it, etc. So there's a big chain of agri-food related or sectors that were affected, and mostly the small businesses that do these kind of job are led by women. So they were as well affected. Personally, I know a lot of SMEs who were led by women in south of Lebanon. Now they closed officially, either their factory or their stores or their small businesses they used to run. We had a big number of 2,154 hectares from the south of Lebanon in the agriculture that has been affected, and they are not being able to reproduce from now until 10 years because they were poisoned in the soil through this attack and the usage of a specific white phosphorus that has been affecting the soil and left the population without a potential of rebuilding these agricultural land or reproducing from these agricultural lands. To move forward, just to give you an idea what I'm saying, this is the map of Lebanon. So nowadays, within the war, these are the area. This is south of Lebanon, and this is Bekaa area. So these are the area where it has been attacked and has been under the attack. And these are the main two areas that supply the agriculture or agri-food in general. At least 15% of Lebanon's agri-foods come from these two places. So now these two places are being out of production officially. And when I say out of production, that means not only the supplies that comes from here, as well those who works in these places, and mostly are women. So you can imagine the huge amount of effect on the economic level and the consequences that comes afterward. So when we are saying about why war should be seen from a gender lens, because women as caregivers that are going to be the first to be affected during crisis. The increase in unpaid labor will be seen much more. The mobility restriction will be much more in place, and the rise of the GBV. Now I'm gonna move to another, it's not to move to another, but I'm gonna shed the light on other group and other population, who are the refugees. In Lebanon, we have two main nationalities of refugees that has been hosted in Lebanon. The Syrian refugees since 2011, the Palestinian refugees since the Nakba. The migrant workers are considered among these vulnerable groups, and I will talk why, because on the legal perspective, they are having very big restrictions among their situation. And to add on top of this nowadays are the internally displaced women who are being refugees in their own countries. To give a number, nowadays we're having 19% of the Lebanese population who are displaced in a total number. Among these, we have 620,000 displaced women who are being now in shelters or being hosted by their families in different places, by like relatives in different places, or being in tents in either Beirut area. Now we have a big place where that has been established to host the IDPs. So in how we say it, in result, the situation of women in Lebanon, be it from different nationality, be it Syrian, Palestinian, migrant workers, or Lebanese women, are facing a lot of discrimination. They are putting a lot of burden above them. When I talk about the Syrian, I'm talking about their rights to residency, their rights to access work or to access dignified work. When I'm talking about refugees, Palestinian refugees, I'm talking about the limitations they have, the structured discrimination they face since ever. When I'm talking about migrant workers, I'm talking about the legislative framework that they live in under the kafala system, which is the sponsorship system. And add on top of this now the internally displaced women who will be facing a big economic and livelihood problem. So if I look into the different type of services that no one has access to properly, starting from the basic services and security up to the rights, if I take these different categories between Syrian women, Palestinian women, migrant workers, and look into the pyramid of the rights or the basic rights to access the service, in each level of these, there's big problematic, big chaotic approach. The Lebanese women themselves don't access all of these. Add on top of this the limitation that the refugees don't access, from the basic service to the rights. So we are facing major issues. Linking these inequalities as well to the Lebanese communities who are foreseeing, if you wish, the refugees in some area as competitors. We have a discrimination and racism sometimes that might raise in the communities. Why? Not because we are not a hosting communities, because even the hosting communities itself, they are facing an economic burden or limited access to service. So this adds more into the clashes and the tension that might rise within them. In a nutshell, to summarize how each of these categories or what kind of discrimination each of these categories are facing, if I look into the Syrian refugees women, mostly the inequality is related to their displacement and their situation and the legal invisibility. So mainly they have more restrictions on their residency. They are not allowed to take residency, and then residency will help them to access more opportunities to work and thus more economic stability. So starting from the legal residency approach, it's forbidden and it's very restricted. To overcome these challenges, we witnessed and we still witness early marriages as a coping mechanism to overcome all these challenges. And when we have early marriages, that means there are much more risks coming on the girls who are being subject of the early marriages. We have a high poverty rates among the community, Syrian refugees community, and specifically women communities, specifically Syrian women refugees. They have barrier to report about violence because they cannot access all the services existing. And they have, of course, by ipso facto, they have limited access to justice. So they are not allowed even to benefit from the from the justice mechanism. When it comes to the Palestinian refugees women, unlike Syrian, they have different elements of let's say, discrimination or restriction to access certain opportunities and service, because the Syrian refugees in general are considered as a temporary refugees, because at a certain point when we're in Syria, they are going to go back. And this is what happens when the regime fell down and a new regime was in place. So we witnessed a wave of refugees going back, but still we have half of these refugees originally still in Lebanon. So unlike the Syrian, the Palestinians are not considered as a temporary. So they were here and they were staying, and thus still they are they were and they are still facing a long-term structural exclusion, whereas they have limited opportunities for economic employments. And when I say limited opportunity, they are allowed to work in a very specific and certain field. They are not allowed, for example, to be architects. They are not be allowed to have access to be a shirigel, for example, or to run a business. So there is a very limited type of economic opportunity they can access. Additionally, as you know, or if you might know, that the Palestinian refugees were contaminated in a specific area in Lebanon. So call it the Palestinian camps. So you have Palestinian camps in different areas in Lebanon. These camps are not directly run by the government, by the Lebanese government, and thus they do have an overcrowded places. They have a very weak infrastructure. They are not allowed to even rebuild or to renovate any of the infrastructure because they are considered as a camp, and it's run by their own let's say, local governance within their camps, and they have to ipso facto limited access to services that comes from the government. So this is another layers that they are facing. When it comes to the migrant worker, we have what we call the kafala system or the sponsorship system. It's very discriminatory system. As well, they are not yet they are excluded from the, let's say, social benefits, but at the same time they don't have the basics protection because of the kafala system. They are always tied to their employer. They cannot move in freedom. They are not allowed, for a sense. One of the things that, or one of the practice the employers do with the migrant workers is that they keep their passport, or they mainly their passport on them, with them. They are not allowed to have it until they finish their contract. So there's a lot of practice that they are limiting their movement, limiting their freedom. As well, they are highly exposed to exploitation and abuse from different type, and specifically GBV. And they are always depending on their employer. They cannot even move, they cannot travel, they cannot go back to their own embassies unless their employer will be allowing. So as well, women-led organizations and women rights organizations are taking into consideration and working on much more dignified laws for the migrant workers. And recently we are asking to withdraw the kafala system, but it needs time, like everything in Lebanon, and priorities are not put in the top priorities nowadays. Other groups that has been witnessing a lot of discrimination are women with disabilities, who are much more facing much more higher violence and at risk for violence, because originally the state is not preparing the infrastructure in the country in general, be it from the education or the hospitalization. They are not preparing the infrastructure for women to be, for people with disability to be, or persons with disability to be having the reasonable accommodation needed in any places. So above all of this, within a crisis, they had to be sheltered in schools, mainly in public schools, during this crisis. And in these public schools, they don't have the reasonable accommodation elements that allow them to move freely or to be at least living in this shelter with dignity. So as well, they are facing a lot of discrimination, and often the policies are not seeing their if there's no enough effort being done to include them in the policies and the laws and making the mechanisms work. Recently, the Ministry of Social Affairs, they issued a very advanced, let's say, or let's say decree to help support in this, but still we are waiting for the results. Another group in Lebanon, the LGBTQ plus individuals, are as well facing a lot of discrimination. They are stigmatized. There's a lot of legal ambiguity around their situation or their legal cases. It's always relying on the judges sometimes, their understanding, their open-mindedness to see some cases taking place. We had different sentences with different interpretation on the legal level. So there's a lot of legal ambiguity around this. Also, we have a very big movement of human rights organizations who are working on supporting the legal reforms in regard for the LGBTQ plus individuals. And definitely when you have ambiguity and you have stigmatization, that means you have increasing in the vulnerability, and especially during crisis. And recently during this crisis, it was reported and documented that in many shelters, when the IDPs moved to these shelters, the LGBTQ plus individuals were restricted or forbidden from being in the shelters. So they had to rely on services provided by other organizations on specific shelters where they can be hosted during this crisis. And like all the other groups, they have limited access to services and safe places. So in Lebanon, it's not enough to be a woman. And it's not just a woman. So it comes with many other identities. So it depends on what are the identities you hold as a woman. It will identify what type of access you have, what type of services you can end up using or having access to. So if I want to brief all the situation in a very simplified, let's say, matter, although things cannot be simplified, for Lebanese women, the main barriers they are facing are gender norms, legal barriers, personal status, slow economic crisis, leaving them with more inequalities, additional inequalities, and high vulnerability. When it comes to the Syrian refugees women, there's the main barrier is related to the legal status, and then that means an extreme restrictions on many other things, including the access to the livelihood, dignified work, etc. When it comes to the Palestinian refugees women, we have a structural exclusion. This is causing a chronic marginalization of the groups. And when it comes to the migrant workers women, we are talking about the kafala system or the sponsorship system, which leaving them as well with severe exploitation. Noting that during the crisis and during the war recently, when the IDPs moved from south of Lebanon, we had a lot of migrant workers who used, and domestic workers who used to work at the home of many families coming from the south. They were left out in the street. And the only response that came from women-led initiatives, not even governmental or from their own embassies. So women gathered their efforts from different organizations and led initiatives to respond to the crisis and provide shelters for these migrant workers women, specifically the domestic workers women, and provide them with the needed and the basics needs to support them during this war. And they were facilitating their connection with the embassies in order either to provide them with a way back to their home or to provide them with legal documentations, because most of the people, when they left from their home in south of Lebanon, they left without their personal or official documents and IDs, and this applies as well for the domestic workers. So As well, this is additional layers that has been witnessed. Why all of this is happening? Because of the fragile state. We have weak institutions, we have collapse and a compounded crisis coming year after year that increase the collapse of the institutions and the public services, and automatically this will increase the inequalities specifically for the most vulnerable groups. We have an absence of social protection, although there were a lot of initiatives taking place, but still very weak, very slow, absence of mechanisms that support this kind of social protection. We have limited service delivery, and even I'm talking about the public service delivery. And add on top of this the political fragmentation within a context of war, so everything is chaotic and leaving a state in a fragile moment. So if I want to brief that how this would be applying on women specifically, so women are much more relying not on public services, they are relying on private services, and these private services mainly coming from the NGOs and the international organization, local and civil society and local initiatives. And as well, there's a slow or weak response from the justice system, causing a lot of delays, specifically when it comes to cases like, and women have anyway limited access to justice because the justice system by itself in Lebanon is very slow, and the application of the laws that would be considering gender or GBV in specific, we had different laws that has been issued to cover up or to support women and specifically GBV legal cases, but had been not well implemented even by judges because there is still, there's still the mixed interpretation of these laws from the judges themselves, and we don't have the right policies and mechanisms in place to cover up that level. So, and we all know when the state is absent, so that inequalities will not be reduced at all, it will be redistributed differently. So this is the case of our state. So the structural inequalities comes from policy-driven inequalities, from nationality laws discrimination, from personal laws discrimination, from weak GBV law enforcement. It should be law enforcement, not enforcement, from labor exclusion, and from access to justice, which is very limited access to justice. So, in brief, why I'm a feminist, why I'm here, why I'm talking about this. I'm very aware that my personal experience, when I'm talking about my personal experience, I know that I'm kind of privileged compared to other women, but at the end of the day, we all navigate the same system. So when I'm a mother, I have a fear, not only as myself as a woman. For now, I know how to navigate the system. I know what I need to protect myself, but I'm worried about my daughter. I want better place, much more safer place, much more legal protection, much more equality in that sense. I'm really anxious about the future because the situation doesn't feel or doesn't let me feel that there is a certain future or promising future in this level. While I'm a professional, I'm navigating the burnout, being in my position right now, and in the field I'm working in. We respond to all these crises. We work on all these crises. We are yet we're living the crisis, but we are as well in it from within because we're looking into the whole situation. This will add up on our anxiety, will add up on our burnout. As well, there's another anxiety on the professional level is what if I lose my job? Because when I see the scene in front of me, it's always black tunnel, if you wish to say it that way. So there's no certain future. This will add up on our way how we react, how we think, the mental load that we carry all the time. As a daughter and a sister, we are being passed through, or mothers and grandmothers, we have this passed over anxieties, passed over pressure and traumas from this intergenerational aspect. Being woman in Lebanon, I'm living in a resilience mode all the time. I'm not living a normal life like anyone else in different places so I'm always on a resilient mode. I'm always on an alert mode. This is causing a lot of exhaustion and adding up on my triggers, and when it comes to the trauma that we went through. And as a citizen, I'm always worried about my country, where we are going to, what's going to happen tomorrow, what is our future, how things are going to be shaped out, because I know that we are living in a very weak state. So all of this is gathered in our mind. I was checking the social media this morning, and someone shared a photo of a Lebanese human brain, and it was divided into different sections. So in our brain we have the anxiety, the war, the social, and the mental. So yes, exactly. So you can say that in each individual in Lebanon, you have all the crises in your head. You are the government of yourself, and you need to be the government of the others. So this is the situation that we are living on a daily basis. That's why I am who I am. That's why I'm feminist. That's why I'm a human rights defender. And that's why I believe in this motto I shared in the beginning, the code that I believed in. Because I believe that with the small things that I keep on doing amid all this crisis, amid all this situation, I believe that I'm still doing a difference. I'm toward a certain change for a better places, better a planet, better humanity, so that we can all live in peace at the end. So to highlight that I am working and I'm part of women-led initiatives. I work on advocacy. I work with the grassroots feminist movement. I provide community solidarity, and I work on legal advocacy, because all of this matters, because all of this is something that we need to do in our daily life. It's not only about our belief, it's by practice that we do it in our small families, in our communities, and on our bigger scale with the government, with everyone. As a takeaways, I want just to highlight that what type of crisis, what any crisis in the world, be it in a war zone, be it in a disaster, be it on economic crisis, always deepens the inequalities, not only for women, for everyone. Intersectionality matters. We cannot approach any kind of crisis from one angle or from one source. We have to hear it from the people who are affected, the people who are in the field, because we hold different identities, we hold different experiences, we are facing different discrimination. So it's very important to look into the crisis from an intersectional lens. While we are understanding this, we have to understand as well that gender is not something that a side issue that we have to look in it. It should be embedded in our thinking, in our way of analysis of anything happening in life. It's not only about who is living, it's everyone is living the experience differently. In Lebanon, refugees' experience is different from women refugees' experience is different from Lebanese women experience, although they both live or benefit from the same, they live in the same country, but they don't benefit from the same system. Women resilience should not be justified. Like, yeah, being a woman, being resilient, ooh, we celebrate it. No, it shouldn't be like this, because what we should be really matter is to live our basics rights. I want to encourage you, because I think we run out of time, but there is 2 recent publications that came out this one, Lebanon on the eve of March to 2026 escalation. 2 days ago it was published, and I'm gonna send all the links maybe to share with everyone. I encourage to read them because I think it make a brief or give you a snapshot about what the facts are in general, not only from a gender lens. And another publication that has been as well, the policy brief number 6 that has been published by UN Women today, actually, not yesterday, sorry. So it has been as well, no, actually today, I think. This one as well shed the lights about the reality on the women in the Arab region in general, the implication of the security and the economic participation, and it has a big bunch on the Lebanon with evidence base and data collected, primary data collected. So as well, those who are interested, they can read. I want to give just an advice for you all. Don't rely only on the media. Yet the media is essential source. We all look into the media. We all look into the news. But if you want to understand any context or any crisis or any living experience, you have to reach out to the people who are living it. Having or relying only on sources that comes from media will not help. There's a lot of research that are taking place, documenting the real life, real experience of people that will widen your perspective about any situation or about any context. Last note, just I want to share because I use the word resilience all the time. Yet we are described that we are a resilient population, but do we really want to be like this? I don't think so. I think what we need to do is to live, to have a basic survival system, and we want to see the change coming. So I hope that I gave a picture. I know one session cannot cover everything. Each topic might be taking hours to talk about. There's a lot of information to share. I tried my best to put it in condensed information. So I hope this was somehow helpful.
Thank you so
Thanks
much,
so much,
Julia,
Julia.
for this. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's such a fascinating case, given the weak state, but strong society and the creativity with which people need to navigate and use informal networks and social institutions like families and religious institutions to try to get their basic services. So with that, let me turn the discussion over to you, Nidal, to take questions from your students.
Yeah, go ahead.
Policy system, and was that established for refugees specifically? Is that for international workers? Is that for international worker women specifically? How does that system work?
Could you hear the question, Julia?
Not clearly. If you can brief it.
Yeah, so she's asking about the system in Lebanon, how it was built, the institutions to accommodate refugees, right?
Specifically, the one for migration workers?
The one for the migration workers.
The migration workers. Okay, so it's a little bit complicated because Lebanon did not sign the convention when it comes to the refugees. So actually, it's acting based on the needs and based on the situation. When it comes to migrant workers, noting that if someone want to work in Lebanon, they can come and work in Lebanon from any nationality they want. They can apply, work as long as they are fitting the criteria that is required and they have the eligibility, if you wish, in terms of experience. When we're talking about the migrant workers, we're talking about a certain group or a certain category that comes for working on domestic workers, on constructions, for instance, or on agricultural level. Usually, these groups are coming under a sponsorship system. So we still have the sponsorship system that we call it kafala. What is different between this group and an employee who's coming under a contract base, who would be having all their rights protected under the labor law, different from those who comes under the kafala system or under the sponsorship system. Those have limited rights, limited access to services, limited access to legal protection. So yet Lebanon, under the ILO, they signed the convention and they are working closely now, the ILO, with the Lebanese state to revisit all these laws and all these frameworks in order to abolish the kafala system, because it's still, let me say, it's still a weak practice or discriminatory practice against certain nationalities. I'm gonna give you another example to have it like in mind. For instance, if we're having an Ethiopian doctor who might be coming to be a resident doctor in given hospital in Lebanon, they would have normal access, a normal contract. While an Ethiopian domestic working woman, she should be applying through a kafala system. So this is the discriminatory approach among, oh, sorry, this is the AI making my hand rise up by itself. Sorry. Okay. So I don't know if I answered the question in that sense, unless it wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Is there any other question? Yeah. Go, Catherine.
So, as a follow-up to the kafala system, what nationality are most of those people, or what countries are they coming for? It sounds like you'd have to be pretty desperate to apply to go to, Lebanon to work when.
Mostly the nationalities that comes for the kafala system or work under the domestic workers, migrant workers, are from Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Kenya, Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Kenya, Cameroon. We have some community from Cameroon, but mainly these are the major countries for domestic workers.
Oh, and just a follow-up. So are the Palestinians that live there that have been there for years and the Syrian refugees, the more recent ones, are they employed, are they working can they get a job doing whatever they're qualified for, or?
Okay, now when it comes to the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, they have access or they have the right to access certain specific jobs. For example, they have a quota up to 15% in the nursing sector. Being a nurse, you can be Palestinian applying, but there are some eligibility criteria that you need to meet. For instance, you need to be graduated from a certain university with a certain rank, and then you can apply for a job in the nursing sector. Okay, this is one of the sectors. You can be working in a restaurant. You can, the hospitality sector, with a limited access to certain hospitality sector. Not all the hospitality sectors are eligible for Palestinian refugees. And again, there's a quota, so that means a certain number is allowed to be recruited. As well, I'm trying to remember the other field. Mainly, they are not major fields, so there's a limitation. So this is one side. Definitely, they can work in the farming, in the construction, some research centers. Sorry?
Garbage. Only 75.
Yes, and some research center, but as well with criteria, with very high criteria need to be, so it's very limited, and it's always related to the quota that is allowed by the labor law. Mainly, if you look into the situation of Palestinian refugees between 1948 until now, first of all, the number has been decreasing big time. So now most of them graduates from high schools and they immigrate to other countries to seeking for the higher education and for better life. mostly they are not coming back. So yeah, this is for the policy. As for the Syrian refugees, because they don't have a permanent residency, or they cannot apply for a residency, because even if they have the residency, it's going to be temporary. That means it allows them only to move in Lebanon, but does not give them the right to apply for job, whatever job it is. That's why most of the Syrian refugees would seek informal work contracts in an informal settings, be it agriculture, be it construction, sometimes domestic work field for women specifically, but without any contract, without any legal framework, which means they are much more subject and higher subject for violence, for abuse, for exploitation.
Thank you. Adam.
You mentioned that there are 18 sects, I assume you mean religious sects in Lebanon. And I was wondering, are there any of those sects that advocate formally for women's equality? And are those views represented in the parliament?
Definitely. First of all, to start from the end of your question, yes, they are represented, because the parliament, how it is elected, it is divided based on sects. So we have a certain number, the seats are reserved in the parliament based on the sects. So we have a certain number for Muslims parliamentarian, seats for Christians parliamentarians, seats for minorities, seats for Druze, etc., etc. So you have this diversity, or this diversity representation. Yet within the same sect itself, there are people who are prominent to be advocating for women's rights, others are not. You have some of these sects who are potentially much more progressive in the way they are acting, or they're responding to certain rights to be embedded in the laws. Others are not. And it's different from one religion to another, because they apply their point of view, of religious point of view, on the role of the woman or the position of the woman within the society. So if a Muslim, let's say, from a religious background, would apply their own vision to where women should be standing or positioning, even for the Christians as well. So there's always a big debate. Nevertheless, just to give an idea, in recent years, the civil society organization, mainly those who were led by women, they succeed to bring to the table big religious figures, put them together to discuss all these rights that has been considered, let's say, controversial among them, to at least come to a consensus around them that there are some basic rights that cannot be discussed differently and should be guaranteed. For example, the custody right, the age of the custody. And they succeeded to be convinced to reform some of the laws, hiring the age of custody in some religious court, which is something that we see as a success, but still very tiny, because at the end of the day, we are asking that one civil law will be applied to everyone. So us as a citizen, we don't have to refer to the religious decisions or to the religious leaders. When it comes, for example, for the heritage legal cases, it's always referred to the religious court. It's not a civil court that would be taking decisions among your personal heritage, or if death in family took place and you need to refer. These are the type of, let's say, interfering of the religious power or the religious courts in Lebanon.
Thank you, Julia. I really don't want to take more from your time, because I know it's very late in Lebanon.
It's totally fine. It's totally fine.
This is
If there's more question, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Julia. That was really, 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 really informative. And I am so sorry that you have to go through all of this. And hopefully we will see an end to this war, and I will see you soon in Lebanon, in Beirut.
hopefully we'll see an end to this war, because the end of this war is gonna be beneficial for everyone, not only for Lebanon. Beneficial. We can see the consequences globally of this war. So hopefully it will end. We will see brighter future for everyone. We'll see much more, let's say, human future in that sense. And so I want to share one last message for, if I may allow. I think what we miss is that, I mean, we witnessed all this conflicts taking place. We witnessed, we were the first generation to watch the genocide taking place in front of us on TV live. I don't think this should be normalized. I don't think that we should be normalizing ourselves with such acts. And the consequences came later. Because we were silent somehow in a certain place, it gave much more, let's say, freedom to act much more into actions that harmed other countries, etc., etc. So I think what we need to know, what we need to do as a human being on the globe, is to take a break and think much more rationally as a human, and try to voice out what we really think from our heart, not from what are our beliefs, how we are being raised only, because we are all raised in different communities. We are all taking beliefs from our parents, from our communities, from generations. Doesn't mean things are fixed. Things can be changed. If we are not changing, we cannot evolve. And this is the evolution. Yani, I mean, we cannot be what the globe went through in general, this planet, from ancient civilization till now. It's not okay to end up this way. So let's hope we can seed in some seeds for change for everyone.
Can I
Thank you
just
so
ask one
much.
question, Nidal?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just very quickly, thank you so much for this really interesting talk and sobering as well. Could you comment on whether you think there's a possibility that Lebanon could adopt a secular state? My understanding is that Lebanese people, they need to marry within their specific sect, and for political reasons, the sects are very internally focused. They want to maintain their power. And I know there's a movement, for instance, to take a religious sect off the identity card and allow people to have whatever religious belief or no religious belief. Do you think that is possible in Lebanon? Do you think it could be helpful?
I think this is the only solution, to be frank with you, so that everyone can have access. That's why I'm saying personal status law is one shot in this process or in this journey, because once you are equal in front of your government, like we are all equal in front of one law, that means we released or we unleashed ourselves from the religious decision. I'm in front of you, I'm an example of intersex marriage, because we come from two different religions, myself and my husband, and we fought for it. Yani our journey wasn't that easy to either take this decision or to make it happen. And we had to, not our family only, we had to convince, it's the society around us, our community that we belong to. But nowadays I can see more and more young people, our generation, who stepped out from their let's say tribal effect of their communities or their religious belonging, and they are stepping out. So I do have a belief, and I hope I'm in the right, I'm thinking in the right way, that the change will come from the people themselves, from their practice. Like I did, like my brother will do, or my sister did, like everyone else I know in my surrounding, that they are stepping out from this close belonging to the religious, and they are seeing themselves that they are equal in front of their peer citizens within the same society, you know. So I think it requires time. The new generation or many generations, like from my generation and onward, they are not thinking either the same way like the previous one. They are having a lot of thoughts of for change, but the only problem is they don't have the opportunity or the platform to be able making the change. And this platform and opportunity is by being engaged in the politics, being representative in the parliament, to make this legislative change happening by legal aspect. As long as we don't have access to this area, we are not able to make the change within the legal framework. But on the community level, on the beliefs level, things are changing. And nowadays, more than ever, people are feeling that enough is enough. We experienced everything. Each religion has its own fight. We went through a lot of conflicts, a lot of political tensions. That's enough. We want to have one state, one law that would put us all on an equal basis. Hopefully it will happen one day. We are fighting. What I can promise is that I'll keep fighting, and I will keep fighting. I will keep working like many others, colleagues and friends in my network. We're growing day after day, I mean, in terms of number, and hopefully we will end up one day to have this secular state that would be supporting everyone.
One last question. Only one question.
Yes, please go ahead.
So Julia, how is the situation today? What are the organization doing today in regard like the funding and the cut of fund? Yeah, I know. I see your face. I know.
It's really bad situation, Nidal. I mean, when you look at it from a different lens, like first of all, there's a big bunch of budget cut. Those who are most affected are the local organization, and specifically the organization serving the communities, local communities. And because by their nature, they are small organizations and they don't have access to funds unless they are supported by internationals. They were the first to be affected, and those are mainly the community-based organizations who are providing the services that is being lacked by the government. So this is to start with. Like I mentioned in my previous presentation, and my previous, when I talked about it, 51% of these organizations might close their program and might close the organization itself because they are not having enough funds. Secondly, the government in Lebanon doesn't support civil society. Although they are trying to make some kind of like new arrangement, specifically under the Ministry of Social Affairs, people had a lot of hopes with the new government, the new government and the new prime minister, because he comes from a legal background, with a strong legal background. He comes from, he's not someone who was really engaged. He wasn't engaged in the civil war by any means. And plus the ministers that he nominated for this cabinet were ministers coming from the field, talking the language, quote unquote, of the civil society. They know how to act. They are coming from different previous experience, be it in UN or international agencies. And this gave people a little bit of hope that kind of change might be coming, much more structured establishment might be in place, but nevertheless, they are coming in they were assigned to this position or to this role in a very complex complicity context, given the war, the economic crisis and collapse, and they don't have a lot of windows to make the change happen. Nevertheless, they are putting the first stones, let's say, in place. When it comes to the international, nowadays, the organizations, I don't know if you read in the recent reports, even the UN agency are facing a lot of problems when it comes to the pool of fund. And mainly the UN agencies are the core agencies who are supporting the public institutions and the government in Lebanon for the specific reforms needed from within the institutions. And most of them, they shifted to local employments in the sense that most of the expat has been reallocated, or they were like, or the position were disestablished, because as well UN is facing a cut-off fund and facing a crisis. So it's all over. And I think it's like all organizations are like individual, living day by day. This is the end result. Like we know we don't plan more than the next day. To be to be clear about the situation, it's like everyone else. It's a mirroring the situation.
That's really sad. I mean, Lebanon was,
Yeah.
and I think still one of the leading civil society organizations. Like they are located in Lebanon.
And don't forget, people are handling a lot of mental load, and they are depressed. Like even those who are in the front lines, we know from ourselves, from our own networks. Nidal, we have a lot of people who works in the field. We are interacting on a daily basis. People are holding a lot of mental load. They cannot, like one day, like I was saying, I was explaining at the beginning that you wait day by day because you don't know what will happen in this day. And if any incident happened or take place in a day, you don't even have the privilege of time to digest what happened, to analyze what happened, and then you step into a new crisis. So this accumulated load is causing a lot of, let's say, monotone response from the organization. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations who were working on reforms aspect, on advocacy, they were forced to shift into humanitarian because they have to respond. So like if we're putting aside the important work, also this should be going in parallel, but we don't have the luxury of resources, we don't have the luxury of time, and we don't have the luxury of energy. So things are complicated day after day. And the internet, this is not only in Lebanon, I think it's an international impact by the cutting of the fund. Even the international organizations themselves, they are facing a lot of shifting and turning over in employees, etc., etc.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Nidal. Thank you to the students who attended in your class. And most of all, thank you to our speaker. We really appreciated hearing your insights. So stay well, and we hope to speak with you again in the future.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.